And hello, everyone. Thank you for joining tonight for a little pop on the late night. I might just call that, even though it's not that late. 9:30 in the east. It is 6:30 in the west. And you're joining me on March 3rd, 2026 at 9:29 p.m. So, I've noticed there's been a couple of people in the comments over the while saying that the distance here is not exactly the same as the distance here. So that has been noted, going to be fixed. But I think I've been looking for some cases like this to put over here as well. I want to get rid of these, and there's some DVDs on the floor and stuff. But yeah, how's everyone doing tonight? Please go to all the social media. That is the Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. Tonight is going to be a little bit about honesty. I'm going to be completely honest with the audience. If you go back and you look at the history of the shows, all the way from the Midnight Mutants to the Other People show to the Other People podcast show, and all the deviations, the late date, late night, salty tonight, there's been a common theme. And one of the common themes is honesty. We're telling what's going on in our lives because people like the internet drama. They like the drama of others to take them out of your own life. And I get that. Before we get into that, though, I am going to suggest a couple of movies or films. I've got three that I'm going to suggest. I'll do them quickly. The first is the movie Fatal Attraction. Michael Douglas and Glenn Close. Now, this has been suggested for us to do on Real Talk, and I'm going to be probably doing this maybe next week, but this is where it all started. A great thriller. Another one that it's under the radar, you probably never heard of, is Bad Lieutenant. Harvey Keitel. He's a gambler, thief, junkie, killer, and cop. This is a movie for people that like films. Check that out. And one more film that I would say, and I often refer to myself when losing weight, is I go the Christian Bale method acting with The Machinist. He got down to a really skinny weight, so I would definitely check that out. But what I want to talk about a little bit tonight, it's been on my mind a little bit. Terry and I spoke about it, and Terry, she's co-host of Salty Tonight. Terry and I may or may not have been, married at one time. Perhaps we were, maybe we weren't. Maybe it was just on the show. Maybe it happened. I don't know. And there's still people to this day that don't know the truth. Um, and that's where we were blurring the lines beforehand, blurring the lines between fact and fiction. But Terry had been a little bit concerned. See, I drink other things other than just water, but I still do have my water. But Terry was a little bit concerned with some of my behavior over the last few weeks. And it has been a little erratic. It has been a little troubling and concerning for me as well. And, I told her that I was going to step back and not really drink for a while. And drinking is something that I've really never had much of a problem with, to be quite honest with you. I drank, for the first time. I was drunk at 27. Was the first time that I was ever drunk. So it wasn't like I've had a history of my life or family members, things like that. I've just never really gravitated toward that. I've never really liked the taste of it, and I've never really liked the way that I've seen other people behave on it. But as I've gotten older and as I've, you know, learned bad coping skills, I gravitated towards sometimes drinking. Um, Probably like I said, the first time that I was drunk, I was 27. Um, and I mainly did it then just to do it for the show. And sometimes I would do drinking. If you go back, we did a shot of beer per minute for an hour straight. And that was probably the last time that I drank beer. I don't like the taste of it. I don't like the smell. And I've had some back in 2020, I dated a girl, and she didn't really drink a lot. But when she did, she said she had a name of the person she became when she drank. So I never really was around her that much with drinking. And I drank occasionally. You would see me come on the show, mainly through a breakup and things like that. And then I moved in with my friend. Um, I moved in with her, and we drank quite a bit. But I really only drank to because she was drinking. And these aren't. I'm not giving excuses. I'm just telling the truth. I would drink because she was drinking, and there was never really a problem there. And I guess where I never had. And I was talking with someone today. I guess where I've never had hangovers in my life, it's made me be able to completely function like there's no problem at all. Um, and drinking water is a good reason. Good for that. Um, but as I've gotten older, and getting into relationships and stuff where drinking was slowly progressed, and that's when it became a little bit of a problem. And not only a problem, and I'm just speaking of myself, but it became a problem, and I've noticed it evolve over the last 5 years or so, the drinking. And it wasn't really because I wanted to chase that drunken feeling, or it wasn't because of that I like the taste of alcohol, or that I even like the way being drunk made me feel. Because being drunk made me feel good sometimes, obviously, but it was more of a coping mechanism, a way to cope with things, and not a very good way to cope with things. So, that has progressed over the last little bit. Um, I had went a little, I drank a little bit throughout the early part of 2025, and um, really it started kicking back in around May, 28th, 29th. And then pretty much from May to September, May, June, July, August, and September 9th is when I had quit drinking, September 9th. And I think I went 47 days without drinking. Um, and then I kind of just spiraled out of control quite a bit. I came on here multiple times in the car. It's the CarCast series, and drank while doing the shows. And that really wasn't. That was more of like being in the fields and being, doing the performance artist thing, being honest and open and hurt. But on the flip side, using it to get views and make a little bit of extra money, and at the expense of my mental health. And during those times, I lashed out, text things that I didn't mean, said things I didn't mean, as anyone would do. I was talking with my therapist yesterday about the entire thing, and I said I can't believe how I reacted, how I behaved. And then she said, she looked me in the eye and she said, "It sounds like to me that you behaved like a human, because there's no guidelines on how to behave um, in manic or situations like that." So, that was a little bit of a challenge to, you know, put the pause on the drinking, because, idle time, like I've said, is not time that's well meaning for me. And I've not been able to write like I had wanted to be able to write. But I wanted to continue doing the show, and wanted to continue making content. And, it seems like the content that everyone seems to really like and want is the content of, the crying, babbling, lunatic, so to speak. And, that's not who I am at my core at all. And, I've lashed out, um, and I've lashed out because I've betrayal, hurt, um, consequences for actions, things like that. But it is never, it's never, I never thought that I would be dealing with wanting to have a drink or wanting to mask pain by drinking alcohol, because that's obviously one of the worst ways you can deal with something. But yet I was, and still continue to deal with that on a small scale. And I'm trying to curb and not do that. I can't at this moment. I can't sit back at this moment and tell everyone I will not drink again. Um, I want to be able to say that, but I don't fully think that I can say that right now. Um, I'm not going to be going live doing car casts drinking. I won't be doing that, and I won't be, making a fool of myself. I won't be doing that. But to genuinely say, are you done with that right now? I got to say the answer is no. I don't think. I don't think. Um, that being said, things are going fairly well. I actually hung out with someone this past weekend, and it was good. It was fun. It's different because I'm not like avoidance. Avoiding personalities feel not feel, but fill the time with other people. And I've done that before. I've done that in the past, and that's not the way to deal with, heartbreak and a breakup. It's I'm not saying it's a wrong way, but that's not the best way mentally to just plug in someone else for like I would be plugging in a woman or another girl for, the relationship that I don't have. And that's not something that I would recommend doing. It's avoidant. So that means later on down the line, when you're alone, you're going to be stuck in those feels and stuck in those feelings, and it's going to be harder to move past because you've avoided dealing with the feelings 100%. And one thing that I've done is, and this is something that's very cathartic, and it's also very reflective, is taking complete and total accountability for your actions. Have the actions that I've made on this show been great? Not always. Have they been great in everyday life? No, they have not. Um, and a lot of the stuff is been public, and that's kind of, what you get a little bit when you're a public person and a personality. But you know that's probably why it was harder for me to ever escape the level that I'm at, because I have discipline in so many ways, but coping is not a great way for me to deal with things. Not at all. And I hate that a lot of that stuff has happened. I really have. But you do have to take accountability. But what's difficult, really, and what makes me, I don't want to say makes me upset, but what chaps my hide, as they say, is you can help someone and aid them for years and years and years, and never get a thank you, never get I appreciate you, never get some kind of post, saying how you've helped them. But yet, you can have someone just come in off the street, that you barely know, and give that person praise and honor. And that's not a good way. That's not really a way that you can be self-reflective. And I think people that do that aren't self-reflective. I think they're caught up in the moment of what they feel, and they're, and this happens often. You can post all this bad stuff, or if you're in the media, say all this stuff, and you're in this little echo chamber of, yeah, that person's bad, yeah, they've done this and this, but it's all hearsay. And that's sad when that kind of stuff happens, because hearsay is not a way to deal with problems. It's not a way to find the truth. And when you make decisions based upon hearsay, the decisions you make are not based upon fact or reality. There was something that I found, and I think I saved it on my phone here. Let's see here. I did. It was a gentle reality check. And the number one thing on here, well, there's not really numbered, but it's like, it's got like a bee and butterfly and mushroom and snail and flower growing. But it says your feelings are valid, but they are not always fact. And that's what a lot of people base things upon, the way they feel, not the fucking fact. And that's very upsetting. It's very upsetting, especially if you're in this, kind of a not dynamic where, uh, bullshit flies back and forth, or non-truths come about. So that was a really good thing on there that I saw. Another one that I saw on there. Not every thought deserves your attention. You are not responsible for managing other people's emotions. And there was another one that I saved. This was let's see if I can find it here for you all. I don't ever really give words of wisdom or the wise, but let's see here. I just saved it a few moments ago, to be honest with you. Saved. Okay, so here are 5 things that alcohol makes you neglect without realizing. And another thing that's kind of bothering and troubling and hurting is that when you've stood by someone through all the stuff that they've put you through, but yet I wish I could find out exactly where it was, but it was something to the effect that they never remember what they said or did to you. They only remember your reaction to it. And that goes back to taking accountability, is that if you can't take accountability for your actions, then there's no resolution, no true resolution. So the battery is running down a little bit on the iPad, so I'm going to wrap up the show. Just wanted to come on and say a quick hello. I hope everyone's doing well. I've had a lot of people ask me how I'm doing. I'm doing much better. But yeah, it's been a challenge, but it's been cathartic. And like many have said, you going through this is the blessing. And it's hard to see the blessing sometimes. It's very difficult to see the blessing sometimes. But I hope that everyone is having a good night. And please go to the social medias, Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, The Other People Show. This Friday, we're going to dive into the movie. I think it's going to be called, I think the movie is going to be After Hours. It is a Martin Scorsese movie from the early 80s. I haven't watched it all the way through. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, and you all have a good night. Adios.